Hey guys, welcome back. Okay, in this lesson we're going to start looking at processing the instruments. We're going to do the double bass first, and I just want to put in there, obviously, when we look at processing the instruments, of course it's going to really depend on the type of mix you're going for, the other instruments that you've got playing around the instruments that you're treating. So it's a bit of a hard one to sort of say this is how you should treat a double bass or a sax or anything every single time. So what I'm going to try and do here is sort of give you the basic sort of framework for the processing, the sort of effects chain, if you like, and the sort of bass settings that I would pretty much always start with, and the things that you've got to look out for. And then of course it's up to you if you want to take it in one direction, if you want to make it more up front or if you want to try and make it warmer, stuff like that. So this is what this section's going to be about, and we're going to go through each instrument that we've recorded, like I say, starting with the double bass, then the sax, then the guitar, and then we'll get on to the actual mixing proper. Okay, so let's start with this one. So we got the double bass. This is just a little arrangement I put together mainly for this tutorial, just to sort of showcase the sort of processing of what we're going through. And just so you know, the drums in this course, the ones playing here, actually come from the Groove Agent tutorial which Jay has just made, and I've got to say it's a fantastic course. So if you're interested in how to sort of make drums like this, how to make sort of really live sounding drums with all the sort of fluctuations and changes and everything that you get with live drums, then you should definitely check out our new Groove Agent tutorial. It's awesome. It's all been comped, it's all been time stretched, so it's all fits. So it's all nice and tight. The performance is pretty much spot on there. Okay, so first things first, we need to start processing this double bass. So let's go into the channel settings and start having a look at what's going on. I'm just going to mute the sax so you can just focus a bit more clearly on the double bass. I want to just add, and this is basically my process for treating most instruments. So we'll go in and we'll just add a EQ. Now in Cubase Pro, I'm not sure if it's available in Artist or not, but we've got this plugin called Frequency, which has a very nice 96 dB cutoff, and you definitely want to turn on linear phase, especially if something like the double bass, where bass is a very sort of important part of the actual sound. And I'm just going to filter out anything below about sort of 30 Hertz. A double bass at its lowest note, which is E1 on a 4 string, will go down to around about 41 Hertz, and on a 5 string it can be as low as 31 Hertz. So you don't really want to cut anything above 30 Hertz, just so you make sure you still get the full range of the instrument. But that's fine. We're just basically making sure that when we add compression later on, that we're not compressing any frequencies that are taking up a lot of room like they would with the double bass. Because if we're compressing extra frequencies, it's going to affect the compressor in a way that we may not want. And then we're going to add a compressor. Now this is to sort of even out these peaks somewhat, just so they're all flatter basically. Because what we're going to do after this, we're going to add another compressor and we're going to bring out the attack of the peaks. But first of all, we want to sort of just level them out a bit. So let's have a look. We want to, the general settings are fairly okay for this. And the main thing we're concentrating on with the compressor is the gain reduction meter. We don't want any attack, we don't want any hold, because the attack is what sort of lets a bit of the audio through, or the bit of the signal through the compressor before it compresses. So the bigger the attack, the more audio goes through before it turns down the volume, which gives it that sort of plucky sound. But we're going to get to that on the next compressor. This one is just to level out the sound. And you can see there, as I bring down the release, the gain reduction meter starts suddenly becoming a lot livelier. That's because the release basically tells the compressor, after the signal drops back below the threshold level, it tells it how long it waits until it can then start compressing again. So obviously if you've got it longer, it's going to wait a long time before it then compresses back again. So if you have it on a very quick release, you'll see the gain reduction meter gets much more lively. And that's because the compressor is working very, very quickly. And as you turn it up, you can see where there's a big peak. It takes much longer for the gain to go back to normal levels. So we want this on fairly quick. We don't want it too slow, somewhere around about 84 milliseconds. Now it looks about right. I think the threshold's just a little bit too high. We don't want to have too much gain reduction. We want it so it's peaking probably about 3 dBs on the sort of biggest peaks of the sound, so you can test that, of course, find an area where there's the highest peak in the audio, and that is about 3 dB, so that's fine. No worries, that's that compressor sorted. Don't need to do anything more on that. Let's get up our next compressor. Let's get the settings of this right. So this one is to bring out the attack, if you want to, of the double bass. So let's just play this through. Now for this I would have a slightly higher ratio, probably be going about 3 to 4, anywhere between there. The release will want to be fairly quick again, but probably over 100 milliseconds. I don't want any hold at the moment, we can play around with that. And what we want to see on the gain reduction meter is something like that, between 3 and 6 dB. So once we've set up the compressor like this and we've got about that, like I say, 3 to 6 dB gain reduction, then we can start playing with the attack. And this is really how you bring out the sort of punch of those particular hits. So the longer the attack, the sort of more sound is, or the more volume is let through before the compressor kicks in. And if you want to make it really extreme, then you just bring the threshold right down, because that means that the difference between where it lets the initial bit of sound through, the actual original volume, and then it suddenly compresses it, that's what we're talking about. That's the sort of attack sound, that's the pluckiness that will come through. So we can bring out the pluck a little bit. It's not super easy with this. It's not as easy as it would be with, say, drums, where we've got, with drums you haven't really got this drawn out tail. With the bass we've got a little pluck, and then we've got a really drawn out note. So it does make it sort of slightly trickier. You're never going to get this like really super plucky, at least not without sort of going in and actually editing the audio and sort of actually tweaking each sort of note. And you can sort of, actually manually sort of do it, but obviously you don't really want to do that, and that's not really the nature of the double bass. So that's fine. If you want to tweak it, you can just make it just that little bit more plucky, no problem. Although, to be fair, it is a fairly sort of plucky instrument anyway, but that's one of the tuning options that you've got. And of course, if you want to make it less plucky, then all you'd need to do is take your first compressor. Let's just bypass that second compressor. Take your first compressor and bring down the threshold. And that will basically just raise the sort of more drawn out notes. These sections here will just sort of bring them up so they're about the same sort of volume as the initial pluck.